Chelsea Lewison.
All right. Welcome, friends. We have the lovely Stephanie Bellinger on today, the spiritual boss babe, and we are so blessed and so grateful to have her. Hopefully, we're going to just dive in and get a lot of good, deep details about some spiritual world, the woo-woo, and kind of all of that magic that she brings to us. So welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to share lots of magic and codes with your audience, and trust that it will be a beautiful, activating conversation.
Absolutely.
Incredible. So we've met just, a couple times and been so just enthralled in your energy and the work that you do. Would you give us a little bit of a background, a kind of who you are and what you bring to the table with the Spiritual Boss Babe brand?
Sure. So I work with and empower entrepreneurial women with getting their message out into the world in a much bigger way and creating a life and a business that really is in alignment with the truth of who they are, so that they could experience the ultimate level of fulfillment, freedom, abundance. And I absolutely love this work. It's been about 7 years now since I started my brand and my community, and it's just been ever evolving and growing and just really rewarding. We have a very big community on Facebook, my podcast, and tons of women around the world are getting out there in a bigger way and doing their thing, and it's so beautiful.
It's so inspiring. Truly. So you work with people virtually. Do you also do in-person sessions? Like, what's kind of the method to your madness?
Yeah, so mostly virtually through my programs and masterminds. And I have done some private in-person stuff for my Quantum Breakthrough weekend. It's like a private retreat. I do intend to do more live in-person stuff this year. As I kind of was just mentioning, like the live thing has been coming at me. So I'm excited to bring that element and do more in-person work that is really transformational and fun. And, there's definitely a different energy to that for sure. Mm-hmm. But
absolutely.
For the most part, it's been online.
Okay, awesome. I'm super excited to see your up level and just really like if the live thing was holding you back in any way.
It was.
Just how much you're going to shine now. Like, truly. Like, that is just brilliant and so exciting to me.
Thank you. Same to me. I'm already massively up-leveling.
Yes.
I like to bring people with me along the ride,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
we're happy to join
over here. Being somebody who's I consider myself an extroverted introvert, where I can go out and do things, and I prefer to not be out and doing things, but I also love it when I am out doing things. Mm-hmm. You mentioned a little bit how it was kind of like you had kind of gone into a little bit of a hermit mode. Do you have, knowing that you kind of have a tendency towards that hermit mode, do you have like a plan in place as you're being called more towards these in-person events in order to kind of balance what your natural tendency is? Because any tips that you have on that, I would definitely appreciate.
That's a great question. I don't necessarily have a plan in place for that. Oh, I mean, I have a rough plan. I want to leave room for flow as well. And if you want to bring human design into the realm again, you guys know how much I love human
by all means.
So I'm a generator, so I naturally am attracting things to me all the time, and I'm just responding with my gut. So for example, I was in this hermit mode for a while. I'm also a 6'2", which is the role model hermit. And so I do need my hermit time. That's when I get a lot of creativity done. And at the same time, it's like, okay, let's come out of the shell. And so I set this intention recently of wanting to connect with new people, wanting to step into my next edge and my next level. And that for me looked like more life things. And so just from setting that intention and doing my own work to be in my joy as a generator, and just as anyone, like we should make that a priority. Just by setting that intention, different things started coming to me, like random people that I don't normally speak to, a couple like inviting me to different things, and I just was like, yes, all right, yes, listening to my gut and saying yes, and that's kind of how I operate. Did you say you were a projector?
We are projectors, both of us.
She's a 5'1".
5'1" projector. Cool. Yeah. So
She's a 5'1", I'm a 4'6".
okay. My roomie's a 4'6", my bestie. Yeah. So projectors maybe a little bit different, but it's not, that different. Projectors need to wait for the invitation, but you can always create an environment for the invitations to flow.
Well, I love doing the in-person stuff. One of my favorite things to do is like community education, again, from the PT side of things. And I was just noticing this recurring theme of incoming patients who are just like super fearful of diastasis right now, which is like that separation of the belly muscle when you're pregnant. Women who are like terrified to sit up straight in bed because they're going to make it worse. And I was like, what is going on here? So I sent a message out to some of my gym owner friends, and I was like, hey, if you're hearing clients saying these things, like, I'm happy to come in and chat about this, because it's like there's so much fear mongering out there. It's ridiculous. And I would love to help people feel more comfortable. And I have people who are like, yeah, we would love that. We would love that. And then I end up having like 2 in-person events this week. And by literally Tuesday night, I was like, oh my God, is it Friday yet? Like, I was just exhausted.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah.
Yeah, and it's important to pay attention to that too and honor that. And especially as projectors, you don't have as much energy also as other people like generators. And so it's important to honor that and have your solitude when you need it.
Yeah. I feel like and now that I'm learning a little bit more about human design, things are starting to make a little bit more sense to me as to like things that I've battled over years, things that I've been like, oh my gosh, Allison, just suck it up and do it. Like, get over it. It's not that big of a deal, that now I'm like, okay, I see why there's so much resistance to this. I see why this is such a hard thing to do, because it's not really my path to be pumping through things.
Yeah.
And so like, in the future, I will likely not schedule 2 in-person events in the same week, or I will likely not. It is. Or I will like try to plan ahead on other business items so that like I don't have to like be in the zone and doing after the events and things like that. But it's just one of those where it's like, I don't know. I sent Chelsea messages a couple weeks ago. I was like, okay, I'm finally looking into this projector thing. I get it now. I see what I'm supposed to be doing. It's crazy. What brought you into the human design world? Like what brought you here, and what have you learned so far?
I am obsessed with human design these days. I first was introduced to it several years ago, and I didn't go super deep in the beginning. I just started learning about how my energy works. But it was the last, I would say, almost 2 years now, a year and a half, 2 years, that I started going way deeper, because I didn't realize that the more you understand your own energetic blueprint and how you are literally designed to be, it's like the code of who you are. And it's not to be like restrictive of like, oh, this is it, and that, like, because I know some people may think of it that way. It's actually very freeing when you understand how your energy flows, because then you get to understand, okay, this is when I'm in my not self, or I have these centers defined or undefined. And so being aware of what that means, I know that this can come up because of that. And this is what, it just gives you more information, so that you understand more functional ways to go about your day, to go about your business, to interact with different people or in relationships. You kind of understand that. So for me, the more I've gotten into my own design, obviously the more I want to learn, have been learning about it and diving in. And there's so much, like, you can go at it for years and years and years, and still there's more. But because the bulk of the work that I do with my clients is supporting them in being who they came here to be. That's always the core of it. And then we just channel it to their business and their message, how to create everything on the foundation of the truth of who they are. And so when we bring human design into that and add that dimension to the work, it just further supports me in supporting other people, and also them in understanding how their energy flows, so they're not thinking they should do things that are actually out of alignment with them, and understanding how to actually listen to their intuition and their decision-making strategy, their strategy and authority. And it just makes things a lot easier. It supports in being more in flow instead of creating resistance, right? And oftentimes that's actually the hard part, because you're so used to doing things a certain way, right? So for example, for generators, we're so used to doing, like doing all the things. We have a lot of energy, and we're not supposed to be doing things unless it's lighting up our sacral. So if we do things that we don't like to do, even though we have the energy, we might will feel like frustrated. And for projectors, if you're waiting for the invitation all the time. So if and the invitation can come in a bunch of different ways. Like if someone reaches out to work with you, for example, and it doesn't mean you need to accept every invitation. So this is where it's like, if you accept invitations that are out of alignment because your authority said, oh, no, this doesn't feel like a perfect fit, but you still accepted it, it may not work out in the way that you wanted to, or you may feel bitter or resentful because it was a pain in the ass client who like you had to hold their hand the whole way and like whatever, they weren't doing the work. These are just an example. And so when you can learn how to really honor your intuition, even when it doesn't make logical sense, it's not supposed to make logical sense. And that's really what a big part of living by your design really is and looks like,
I love that because like one of the things that I've noticed is like what you said, it's kind of like you have freedom now. Like you have this, like, it's like this path, this guidebook as to like, is this a thing that is, I don't want to say wasting your time, but is it like something that's distracting you? That's what I mean to say. Is it like is this a distraction, or is this what you're actually intended to do? And that whole like waiting for the invitation, but also you don't have to accept every invitation.
You're not
supposed
to accept every invitation.
And now that I've gotten more comfortable with this, and I can say, like, when I get on the phone with somebody to try to determine, like, whether or not I'm a good fit for them, I am also, like, are you a good fit for me? Like, I don't want to try to convince you that you're not your diagnosis. If you're coming in and you are your diagnosis and you're refusing to accept that you can grow past that, we're probably not going to fit very well, because I'm going to say a lot of things that are going to challenge your belief system, and you're probably not ready for change yet, And so it's like understanding that a little bit more has given me the confidence to say, this is not my person, but that's okay, because I have a lot of people that you're going to jive well with, and let me set you up with them. And that way they're still getting the help they need. I still feel okay about the situation, kind of saying we're not a good fit, and they are going to get the care that is actually going to benefit them, versus thinking there's this PT who is trying to bulldoze their belief system, which is absolutely not what I'm trying to do, but it's so conflicting to what they personally believe that it just feels like too big of a shock.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, and it's important.
Yeah.
You share with us, because like I know that human design is something that you love, but it's not your whole thing.
It's
Do you
not
mind
my whole thing.
sharing your like journey to get to where you are?
Yeah, what part of my journey? Because I have lots of stories.
You have a lot of stories, and I loved
lifetimes in this one lifetime.
Yes, I know.
You sure have.
I think it was interesting, the shift that you made from more like the fitness world to where you are now.
Sure.
Like I think that's really cool. And then we'll see where that takes us.
Yeah, so I have always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I've always been an artist. I consider myself an artist first and foremost. Even my content and the work that I'm doing now, I view as my art. And so I wanted to start there for a second, because before I did fitness, I did a lot of creative things, makeup artist, bra designing, like, I make pendants as well. You guys might know. Power pendants, if anyone wants to check them out.
That's cool. Yeah. Where do we check them out?
At Power Pendants on Instagram. So I have always been into art, but there was a time in maybe like 2012, I went through another phase of awakening, and I eventually realized that I wanted to support people in a way where they could transform their life in some way. And so for me, fitness was my first taste of personal development. And it's always been part of my life since I was about 17. I lost 60 pounds when I was 17. But it was always my thing. So I decided, let me become a trainer. Because actually the reason why I wanted to become a trainer really was because I wanted to make fitness videos for YouTube. And in my mind back then, I was like, oh, there's no way I can make fitness videos for YouTube if I'm not a trainer yet. So I have to get, credentials. So I was waitressing at a bartending waitressing thing in New York. And all these trainers came in and they were like, oh, you want to, and I was like, oh, I want to become a personal trainer. I was talking about this. And they're like, oh, you should work at one of the best gyms in New York. So I was there for about a year and then went on my own. And like I said, I've always been an entrepreneurial spirit. So I knew I wanted to do this for my own, but I needed to get my in. And while I was at the gym, I was also learning about network marketing. And I was introduced to the ability to impact people from all around the world. I was already in my realm because I wanted to make those YouTube videos. And I had this, like, I want to reach a lot of people and make a big impact. I just didn't know what it all looked like. So that's kind of cool to share and say, because it was my intuition guiding me, and I didn't know what it was all going to look like or what it meant, but I had a deep calling. And at that time, all that information that was there for me was, I want to reach a lot of people. I want to make a big impact, and I want to be, abundantly supported by it, doing what I love. That time it was fitness. So I went, I became self-employed as a personal trainer in New York City, started my own boot camp, and was doing the network marketing. And at that point, I was like, holy shit, this is like my dream come true. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. And like, I wasn't like balling or anything, but I was doing really well for myself. I was renting, a posh studio, living in the city, training my clients, making 6 figures. And it was a huge timeline shift as well back then. Because I remember I went from barely scraping by and not even having a solid place to live. I was like couch surfing for 3 months to suddenly making like 10, 15 grand a month working for myself. And it literally happened. It felt like it happened overnight. There was some little planning, undercurrents, but it happened pretty quickly. And so when I started doing that, I was doing great. And then I realized, oh man, am I going to be able to keep this up? I had this desire to make videos still, but I wasn't as confident as I am now. And it really crushed me because I knew I had it in me, but I also I didn't know how to bring it out. I was like, when I made videos back then, I would be like, hi guys, my name is Stephanie, and it's fine. Like everybody has their day one. I wanted to get better at it though. And so I realized I had all these limiting beliefs come up, and I started learning about healing and personal development, going to seminars, reading all the books, listening to hundreds of hours of videos, and realized, wow, I didn't even start my healing path really from the abusive relationship I was in or this and that. Mm-hmm. And so there was all this dialogue going on in my head of, you're not going to be able to keep it up. Like, you suck, you're stupid, whatever. All of these disempowering stories were going through my mind, and I was feeling like just not confident and capable. And that was when I discovered EMDR therapy. It stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And it's a really quick way to heal from PTSD and trauma, like within a few sessions. I started going to that. Then I was taught EFT tapping, hypnosis, NLP. And I was so committed to rewiring my subconscious mind because if I didn't, and this actually did happen, but in hindsight, it was all fine. But things from my personal training business seemed to crumble. Like, clients moved away, like money was running low. I ended up bartending again after a year and a half being self-employed, and I felt like a complete failure. And so I knew what caused it because I was aware of all of the stories that were playing out. And I knew what got me there to begin with was I was visualizing, I was embodying, I was like really excited. And so I had the awareness of the contrast of what was happening. So that's when I really committed to doing the inner work. And then I was introduced to plant medicine in 2015. And that's when I decided, okay, this is all happening for a reason. I don't want to do just fitness anymore. I want to help people in a deeper way. I want to help them. I want to support them and empower them with like connecting to their higher self and really being who they came here to be and being confident and all of that. And just being able to hear the voice of their soul versus the voice of other people who've said things to them or whatever is going on. And so once I started working with psychedelics, that played a huge part in the inspiration of my brand, to be quite honest with you.
That's
So
incredible.
I have to ask because I'm super interested in this world. Okay, for those people who are interested in learning a little bit more about psychedelics, what would you recommend that they look for in like a guide or somebody who they can learn from because I know there's like tons of different types of options and tons of different types of guides, and there's microdosing and there's the big doses and all that kind of stuff. Like, how do you recommend that somebody who's new to that journey, who's like, you know what, I want to do some subconscious kind of reprogramming as well. I want to open myself up because I know that I'm holding on to other people's crap and I really want to be able to see my path clearly. And I feel like this is an option for me. How would you recommend they go about that process?
That's a great question. I think that I have always been referred to people, and I think that if there's anyone and they can recommend someone, and you can do your own research there, I think that it's good to know someone who's had a direct experience with a facilitator. Personally, that's how I feel. Aside from that, because you can't, I guess, always do that, ask the right questions. Like, how long have they been studying and training and working with the medicine? How many, groups have they done? Like, do they understand your unique situation or intentions? And listen to your intuition. But I think the questions to ask should be, along the lines of how long they've been studying and doing the work and what that looks like and entails. And also, do they have an integration process? Because most people who facilitate psychedelic journeys, they don't have an integration process. It's like, okay, the next day we'll do an integration circle. Cool. What'd you learn? Great. On your way. And then you go back to your environment, back to the same things that you've been around, the same people, and you're a different person, but you're in the old environment with the other people. Yeah. And so you can revert back into the old patterns, or it could be it could be a lot. And so it's important to have someone to support you. And there's integration coaches. I do some integration coaching too, because I'm very well versed in the space and outside of the space. But there are people who can specifically support you through integration too, outside of, the person that you may sit with. But it's important. And what integration is, okay, I had this big life-altering experience in my psychedelic journey. How am I going to actually bring this back to real life? Because, you got to come back to real life and the same environment, or, what's going to shift? Are you going to quit your job and find a new one? Are you going to have that conversation with your mom? Are you going to apologize to your partner? Whatever. Like, are you going to stop eating the crap that you've been eating? Because a lot of different things. And of course, you don't need to do it all at once, but yeah.
Right. Actually, I have a question. So, for people who maybe aren't even as aware of like what psychedelic therapy would do for them, would you say that it is a tool used to help you quiet those programmings and those stories that we were talking about, those you suck, you're the worst, you're going to fail, etc., to kind of quiet that and thin the veil between that version of ourselves and our authentic selves and like who we are at our like soul energy, our authentic self, that capital S self?
Yeah. Everyone's experience is different and unique, but in my experience and many people I know, it has definitely supported with quieting down the voice of the ego, really opening your heart. And when you're in that space, you're able to, you're correct to hear and feel and know the truth of who you are. You're able to see past situations in a completely different light. So when you have that new awareness and that new perspective, it allows you to let it go. It's like, oh, okay. Like, I've done so much healing. I was in a very abusive relationship when I was 14 to 20. And I have done so much healing around that in the psychedelic space that supported me in completely seeing the experience in a different way, forgiveness, gratitude, forgiving myself, tending to that version of myself who was in that situation, because everything's happening at the same time, past, present, and future. And so I was able to go back and like give her all the love she needed, And so there's a lot that can come from working with psychedelics, and every different one is obviously a different experience. I mostly love working with mushrooms. And aside from the healing that you can do, personal healing on your own inner child, past experiences, releasing emotions, you can also do healing for your lineage, your ancestors, because it's all in our DNA. And, it's wild. Like, there have been times where, so let me say that. So that you could do healing for yourself, healing on your lineage. And then you can also connect to the source. You can connect to your multidimensional gifts, your star family, like so many different things that can conspire and happen. One thing, if you don't mind me sharing like a little experience.
Please do.
Yeah, please do.
I've had a lot of experiences, and honestly, before I get into the story, psychedelics and plant medicine have completely changed my life. Like I say this as my own experience, and I'm also aware that it's not for everybody, and that's completely okay. And it's not like a quick fix. Oh, when I do this thing, then I'm going to be fixed. There's no fixing, but growth, expansion, healing. If that's something that's calling to you at the right time with the right person, amazing. It could be great. For me, that's what it was. And there are also a lot of other ways. Like, that's why I say the integration is the most important part. It's like, what are you going to do after it? So I had this experience, speaking of healing within yourself and your DNA, where I had this intention to go into this experience, and I was like, okay, my intention is to release all of this grief so I could find my spark again. That was my intention going in, which is crazy, because what happened was, once I was in the experience, hours into it, I started crying. And then I was just like a normal cry. And then the facilitator came over and, was kind of not cheering me on, but he was like, good, you're doing great. Like, I'm here if you need me, kind of thing. He sat next to me. And just from that, like, I felt, I guess, safe enough to let it more out. And I had the most guttural, primal, excruciatingly painful, yet simultaneously blissful release of grief. I didn't even know those sounds could come out of my body. I'm serious. You would think that, I know this sounds like dark, but you would think that everyone I knew
I love it.
just died. Like, I had no idea. It was like tumbling out of me in the form of cries, and it sounded very painful, but I was experiencing extreme bliss. And this is when my light language fully activated, because I was clearing all of that energetically and vibrationally out of my cells from the crying and the vocalization of the experience, if that makes sense. This is what I'm
absolutely.
And so as soon as it like lifted all the way out, in came, the frequencies, it was a wild experience. I have a whole podcast episode on that. And that was when I understood that, well, I already knew that we are so much more than our human selves. Like, this is just our little avatar here in the physical world. That was a higher aspect of me, or, God, whatever, multitude of things.
Right.
Streaming through me, and how I am interpreting that, it very much felt like other aspects of me outside of Stephanie, like my multidimensional.
Yeah.
And through the vibrations, the frequencies, these are not sounds you can make on your own. And I literally saw my DNA, my cells being upgraded, being like the old energy that I was releasing from the grief. Like, I felt like it was like, just like, released. And then all this new information came in and restored it. It was almost like I was being like sewn back up with new information or dormant information. And so, that was an incredible experience that opened my channel and showed me a lot about the power of, what's possible in the form of healing, and also showed me, and it's funny because I said my intention is to release this grief and find my spark again. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
That's incredible.
but it showed me that even outside of situation like that, when we allow ourselves to fully feel and fully emote without being in any stories, and even you don't always have to use the vibration of your voice, but if you do, and when you do, let yourself go at it, because and when you're staying out of any stories and you're just with the emotions, you guys probably know this stuff, like that's the fastest way and easiest way to move energy in my well, I mean, there's a lot of other ways, but and it feels so good.
Yeah.
And
So
you
good.
open up.
I love
to
that you
more,
said that.
Yeah. So that was also another golden nugget I got out of it. Okay, this was a great mystical experience. And also in everyday life, now I know, hey, like, let's give space to what's coming up when it does, and not judge it, and just let it come out.
Yeah.
So with an
Absolutely.
experience like that, because like you said, you have a background in helping people integrate and things like that. Do you do like your own check-ins with yourself, or are you working with a facilitator to integrate a big processing like that?
Yeah. So for that, I do both. I have worked with a lot of different coaches and facilitators, but specifically for that, I have also a very close soul family they're all into, they're all coaches and facilitators, and, so I have a family that I can plug into to discuss different things with, thankfully. So that and sharing it with them too. And that has been super supportive. And also I have been doing the inner work for so long now and I'm not perfect, obviously, by any means, but I have learned how to navigate my inner world a lot better. Like I'm pretty proud of my ability to navigate myself.
Absolutely.
And if and when I'm stuck or, whatever, I have support all around me in a multitude of ways. And that is important because we do get in our own box. So it's a combination of both. For sure.
Okay.
And I love also that the people I do have in my life, they're always stretching me and challenging me to grow as well. And I do the same for them. Like we, call each other out on different things and just lovingly, and so it's helpful to be around people that expand you.
For the people who go through an experience like this, and like you mentioned earlier, like sometimes like you have to come back to the crap, like you're coming right back into this environment that is keeping you in these patterns. Is there hope for people in those situations who are maybe living with people who like they're kind of stuck in this pattern with, or they're working with people who they're stuck with the pattern with, and there's like their living situation does not allow for them to just be like, I am done with you, I am moving on, I am bettering myself.
Yeah.
Are those people kind of just like stuck with it, or are there like options for them to like
First of all,
still make their progress?
We're never stuck in anything. We always have a choice. And so when people realize that they always have a choice, that's when they are empowered. If you believe that you do not have a choice, you are not in your power. And so there's that. And I also get at the same time that it's not always easy. So for example, if someone did realize, holy shit, I don't want to be with my husband anymore, or like, I want to quit my job. And, there may be this, they may choose to not do that immediately because there's some things they need to figure out and plan and whatever to feel grounded in that process as much as they can. So there's that. So I would say that, you always have a choice. I mean, I was with someone a while ago that I really, wanted things to work. We just weren't on the same growth path, and growth is like one of my top values, especially with someone I'm going to rock with. We have to be if you're either growing together or you're growing apart. And so we were growing apart, and I didn't want to listen to that right away. And I didn't for a little while. And I ended up, it was a long distance relationship at first. And then I ended up moving in with him. He wasn't a bad guy, whatever, just like was not aligned. And quickly after I moved in with him, I found myself just realizing like almost instantly, and this isn't thing. And with psychedelic help and whatever, like just was, all the things were pointing to, you gotta not live together at least. And so I found myself crying myself to sleep every night, like really going through my process with it. And I had support. I had one of my best girlfriends, soul sisters, amazing facilitator as well. And she did coach me a lot through that process at that time. I didn't have the same tools and awareness that I do now. And I'm eternally grateful for her support during that time. But eventually I had to make a decision to leave, to move, and it wasn't easy. And here's the thing. I believe that when we decide in our mind that, right, we're ready for something new or we're ready for something to be done, the universe conspires to make it happen. And it doesn't always happen in the time. I mean, we do need to take action and be proactive about it. So I made that decision, and, I ended up manifesting just the perfect new little place, and everything worked out, and it came to me again. It was like, yeah. So long story short, just to share an example and to say that if you do need to make a big decision, or you are choosing to make a big decision that is not easy, because it's not always easy, you've got to really listen and honor your intuition and what your heart is telling you, and figure out how that's going to pan out in some way, shape, or form, because it's not always easy. And I totally get that. I've had a lot of experiences where it is not always easy. And you know what? What's even harder than that? Staying in the same place. And so
choose your heart.
So something that's always helped me also was, okay, how will I feel when I'm not in this situation? You know what I mean? Like, this isn't what I want. So, yeah.
Do you think that there's something to be said for, like, you mentioned manifesting, like I manifested this new environment. Let's say you're somebody who, like, you are in a situation where you feel like financially I can't get on my own, or legally I have to be around this person because they're a toxic ex-spouse, or whatever the case may be, right? So you're kind of, you perceive that being stuck there.
You perceive it. I was in that situation. I didn't have a car. I had a couple $100 in my freaking bank account. I lived in a new state that I just moved to, and I was trying to get my business off the ground, and I was sleeping on a fucking air mattress, okay? Like, I was in a place where I couldn't technically do it, and I didn't because I decided to. And so, like I said, once I decided to, I had 2 side jobs going on. There was a friend that I knew that would come into the bar that I worked at, who was moving out of his apartment and wanted to lease it to me. I couldn't do it on my own, so I found a freaking roommate. I could get furniture, so I was like, yo, I'm gonna freaking sleep on it. Like, I didn't care at that time. I cared enough, but what I cared about most was my freaking sanity. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to focus on anything or get to where I wanted to be if I stayed in the same place. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And if you're somebody who's like that, and you've decided,
it's true though. It's so true.
Yeah. And if you've decided to make that decision and you feel like this is the decision, I am open to this, I'm taking whatever I can get, and nothing really seems to present, do you feel like there is, like, you're there for a reason still, like there's still something for you to be learning from this environment that, like, you haven't quite learned the skill yet that you need in order to get to that next level?
This is such a great question. I love this question because, yes, I've literally, I'm sure most of us have been in situations like that, and sometimes you don't know what the hell to do. You're like, man, I'm trusting, I'm doing the things, like, what, something's got to give. I get that. And whenever I've been in situations like that, there are 2 things that really help me. 3. So the first thing is to ask myself, what do I need to learn from this? What is the lesson here? What do I need to learn from this that needs to be integrated so that I can clear the energy around the situation? And so there's that. The second piece is I like to remind myself that there's gonna be a day soon that there's going to be a day where I look back and I'm going to have one hell of a story to tell about this experience. And that excites me for some reason. Because, I put myself after the successful shift, like well after. And I'm like, man, like a year from now, I'm going to be telling this. Like just now, how I'm telling you the story about the air mattress. And I had that thought back then. One day I'm going to tell this story. It's going to be awesome. And so there's those two things for perspective shifts and broadening your, awareness and getting back into your power. And then there's actually taking even micro actions. It doesn't need to be big things, even if you don't know what these actions are going to lead to. So say, for example, like, I don't know, you're struggling financially and you want to change your living situation or whatever, your business is like still getting off the ground, whatever it is. And you don't know what to do, but you're like trying to, maybe you decide to, I don't know, go to an event that you saw pop up in your town and you're like, oh, let me just go here. And then maybe you end up like mingling and meeting a few people and you sign on a high level client. That is exactly what you can help them. They're perfect for you and totally unexpected just because you decided, all right, I'm just going to go to this thing. Or maybe you want to, it could be anything. It could be things like that. Yes. It could be also, I'm going to prioritize my joy. And I haven't been doing that. And and it's not easy to do when you're in a place where you feel like crappy, obviously. That's the time that it matters the most. And so, like, whether you got to put on a pump up song and do a dance in front of the mirror, like how I love to do, or anything that you can think of, even small, that is actions that get you into a different energy or whatever. It could be anything. But so action, it's even if it has nothing to do with the thing, can open you up. That's from what I've experienced. Like even this in the past.
I love that example.
Yeah, like even like I said in the past week, I had literally. Do you mind if I share another?
Please go ahead.
So, and this is great for people listening. Like if you're going through what I felt like, and I feel like a lot of people have been going through this, where lately, or maybe they're coming out on the other side, where just you feel like you're in a funk. Like things are like meh. You feel like just it's not, in super flow. Like. Kind of boring, whatever,
absolutely.
Whether it's in your relationships, whether it's in your business, whatever. So I was going through a phase where I just wasn't feeling like myself. And about like a month ago, and of course I had my good days, we're human. It's not like I was like, in a depression, but it was, like not fun.
Yeah.
So
it wasn't feeling as easy.
Yeah. And I had a friend come over and he was like, how are you doing? And I could have said, everything's doing great, like whatever. But for whatever reason in that moment, I was like, you know what? I'm honestly really not doing well. And I started crying. And for me, in the past, I had a hard time like being really open with people, whatever. And I felt safe, and I was just like, you know what, I'm not really doing well. And I started crying, and he asked some really great questions. And I realized in the dialogue, he's a projector too. You guys ask him very great questions to get to the heart of it. And I was hearing myself telling him, I haven't been on top of my practices. I haven't been, doing the things that like make me excited, and I don't feel like myself because I haven't been doing I do a mirror work every day. I haven't been dancing in front of the mirror. I haven't been flirting with myself. I haven't been joking with myself. I do all these things like legit. I know it sounds weird, but it's fun, No,
I love it.
Like, I do really funny random ass stuff by myself, but I wasn't doing that. And so I was crying. I was like, I don't feel like myself. And then I realized that I was judging myself for sharing this with him and all. And from that moment, just from that realization of I haven't been doing things on a consistent basis that bring me joy, number one, that's the awareness. I'm judging myself for feeling all of these things and for being seen in this space. So I'm obviously not accepting myself in some regard, because, self-acceptance and self-love means you got to be there for yourself, even in the moments where it's hard. And so I realized I wasn't being there for myself in the moment that I was. And so, of course, I was still stuck in this stagnant energy because I was judging the shit out of myself. And,
Right, exactly.
I was neglecting the things so I had all this awareness, and I was like, all right, let's get on. I'm going to get on top. And and releasing the energy from crying and being seen and having a witness, multidimensional healing right there. I unlocked things. That's when I started, I'm going to say yes to more things, and started getting all these invites. Got that invite to speak at the thing. I'm going to say yes to this, because another really golden nugget is when you say yes to things, not just things that you normally wouldn't do, but when you say yes to things that scare you, you literally become another person, a new version of you on the other side of that. And everyone can think about this right now. Think about a time when you were scared to do something, and who you were before you did that thing versus who you were after you did that thing, and when crushed it or whatever. You've met a new version of yourself. It could be anything, or any skill that you became great at. I remember who I was before I did videos and stuff, or when I really wanted to do videos. I was like, I want to do them so good. I want to be. And, some things don't happen overnight too.
Yeah.
But so you always become a new version of yourself on the other side of fear.
Yeah.
I love that. That's such a great way to explain it too, that it's on the other side of fear. Like, that fear is showing up for a reason.
Yeah.
And in fact, if we listen to it instead of running from it, we are going to get what we're looking for in the long run. That's incredible. I love that example.
Yeah.
And I love that you have truly so many within your story. You're like, listen, I committed to my message, my vision, what I wanted, what I was, my authentic self, and it was hard. But I did it, and I kept committing to it. And there were moments that I had to rewind, take a step, look within, identify that you weren't doing the things like dancing in the mirror and loving yourself the way that you needed to. And you were still able to then overcome that, and look what has happened. It's even better and more incredible. That's such an excellent example. I love that. I'm so glad that our listeners are going to be able to really have that tangible story and see, because this is someone. How many downloads have you had of your podcast now?
We're over 500,000 now.
Over 500,000, right? So this is no small feat. You've built an empire within your brand.
I so appreciate that, and I'm just getting warm, girl. We up leveling right now.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's incredible, and how inspiring for people, especially because I have a lot of clients who are really interested in this stuff, but they're like, oh, but no, I could never do it professionally. And it's but if you're that interested and you're that passionate about it and you want it every day when you wake up and you go into your corporate job and you're like, this is just not it for me. Just because it's scary doesn't mean you shouldn't. It means you should. And look how excellent that worked out for you.
Yes. That quote, fortune favors the brave?
Yep.
It does. You cannot, and I believe that I'm a believer that things can be easier and more in flow, but you have to be okay with facing the fear, and that's not always easy. And you're completely right with what you said. That's why only 1% of people actually make it, with their business and things, and to the level of success and abundance or whatever, and impact.
Yeah.
Because most people, they either stop right before the finish line, or they don't even start to begin with. They just tiptoe in because of the fear. And really, the quantum leaps happen when you go there first, who you be and what you do. You've got to embody that version of yourself right now and take the actions that are in alignment. And it's not always easy. it's not always easy, but it's always worth it, because when you leap, the net always appears, and you will realize how resourceful you actually are. That's one of the greatest gifts I realize, is how resourceful I am. And it's not always from effort.
No.
Well, we talk about it all
and
the time.
powerful.
Yeah. And we talk about, like, Chelsea and I talk about all the time, like, if we're feeling stuck or something, and like, I do a lot of, like, checking, like you said, checking in with different versions of myself and things like that, you know, and that whole, like, I'm looking forward to being able to tell the story of the crap I'm going through now in a few years, you know? And so, like, when I talk to people about this, or I think about this and stuff, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to check in with my future self, and what is that person doing in order to, like, when they're living their life at what I'm dreaming I want, what are they doing in their day? But it's like, okay, well, Allison, you just don't have that experience yet. Well, not that you don't have the experience, you don't have the skill yet. Like, you still have to learn the skills to get there, which means that you have to take the leap of faith. You have to take the jump. You have to go into the fear so that you are forced to learn the skills so that you can then continue to build on those skills. It's like, if you want to be, you know, if I just wanted to be a PT the rest of my life, I would have just stayed in the hospital system, but that's not what I wanted, you know? It's like, I wanted to have a wider reach, so I needed to take that step to a place where it gave me the freedom to do the other things. And so I think that's one of the things that people miss, is like, well, I'm thinking about it, and putting my energy in it, and I feel like I'm doing all the things and stuff. It's like, right, but have you actually, like, done any acting? Like, have you acted on anything to, like, face the fear? Because that's a skill. Facing fear is a skill. You know, facing unknown is a skill. And if you haven't done any of those yet, if you haven't tested your capacity for zero, like, you haven't built the skills required to be that 1% yet. And so that is, I think, something that's really important for people to understand, and for myself included. I'm not excluding myself from this. It's just the capacity for zero expands as you get more into it. You feel more comfortable, like, okay, well, that was a rough month, but it's okay. We can move past it. But yeah, that's all I had to add there.
I love that. I love that.
And it's cool that you've been going through, like, such a big shift. I'm sure too that probably was a big leap for you, from going to, you know, on your own with what you're doing and taking this new direction. Because a lot of times we tie our identity too with certain things.
What we do.
Jobs, whatever. You know? And that's another big thing that people need to break out of, if they're, you know, going from a job or a career to being on their own. There's this thing where it's like, they've always identified with being a, you know, executive at a company or
clinician.
Whatever. Clinician. And so, like, for me, I wasn't really, like, in a real job. I mean, it was a real job, but, like, personal, like, I would teach fitness classes and bartend, so it wasn't like that. But I did feel that a little bit. And it's
absolutely.
You're letting go of a part of who you were.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Your identity.
Well, speaking of that, talking about letting go of who you were, and you've mentioned that you've kind of migrated through a lot of different avenues in life. Like you said, you've lived 1,000 lives by this point in your life.
My line,
and we're talking about design. And we've talked about how you're going into this next big jump right now. We're, like, at this launching point of this next big jump. Do you feel like, at this point in your life, do you feel like I am doing what I'm meant to be doing the rest of my life? This is what I'm supposed to be doing? Or is it more of like, this is the next stepping block of what I'm going to be doing next, and I don't know what that thing is yet, but I know that this is what I need to get there? Like, is there a direction you're going for, or is it like, I'm just going where life takes me, but I know this is the next thing I need?
It's a little bit of both. Like, I know that I'm on my purpose and mission. I actually have this whole download that came before a while ago, where I don't believe that you need to find your purpose. It finds you. It is you. And so whatever's lighting you up right now. And also, some people just know, like, I've been doing what I'm doing for the last 6-7 years, what I'm doing now, but there's all elements of who I am, and it evolves as I evolve. And there's also a core theme for me within the things that I've done and continue to do. And so now in this next evolution, I feel like it's an elevated version of my work, an elevated message, an elevated presence, you know, you get a little preview, an elevated frequency, And I am always open to things expanding and evolving. It's me. Like, we're building personal brands, most of us, at least, the three of us.
Yeah.
And so whatever I do, it just evolves with me and comes with me. And it is, an extension of me. And that's what I believe, like, that's my whole thing with Spiritual Boss Babe anyway, of like, be the boss of your life and also create a life and a business that is built on the foundation of who you are. So it doesn't really matter what shifts. There's usually a core theme, though.
I love
Did that
that.
answer your question?
I love it.
It did. Yeah.
Yeah. And as you gain
for
more
sure.
skills and experiences and knowledge, you might want to infuse that into your work. Like, I became a trainer of NLP and hypnosis and all of that. That's infusing. When I started opening my channel, that stuff's, whenever I have like new downloads, lessons, experiences, I teach it and I share it and in support for other people. So it's like, I don't know what's to come in my life in some regards, but maybe, it can all has a place if I want to weave it into my work, my art.
Absolutely. Your art, exactly. Like, you have the ability to listen to what lights you up, what inspires you, what really gets you going and gets that passion ignited. And in using that to point your compass towards, now you can go back and see that by doing that, you actually were following the path the whole time. Like you said, like the YouTube videos and the posting the workout videos. And like, I'm sure back then you probably did not visualize this specific version of you, but now you can see that it was there all along.
And if you want to get quantum, this version of me was guiding me back then and probably led me to plant medicine and all that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And then the future version of me, your higher self is always guiding you. It might not always be crystal clear messages. However, it's listening to your intuition allows you to trust in the unknown and be supported.
Yeah.
Or the unseen,
I love
I should
that.
say.
I have a quick question about that, because I think that there's a lot of people about like who kind of feel stuck. They kind of feel like they're the people with the stories of like, or they don't believe in any of this stuff because the fact that they could manifest something kind of means that they've manifested the life that they're in right now that they kind of hate. And that's a little scary to face. So what would be your recommendation for somebody who's like, all right, like I'm willing to give it a try. Like I'm willing to try to like check in or be more intuitive or anything like that. Like, what is a quick takeaway like step that people could do right now to just sort of get a little bit more in touch with the intuition or their spirit guides or anything in this world that could kind of give them that inner wisdom, that inner guidance as to where to go?
I would say to start with meditating. And I know this sounds really simple, but here's the thing. In order to hear the voice of your soul, of your higher self, you've got to quiet the mind. The mind is what gets everyone messed up. The stories, the loops of thoughts. We have 60,000 something thoughts a day or a minute or some crazy, I don't remember the exact numbers or whatever, but it's wild. And our mind is constantly going and going and going. And so you've got to quiet the mind. And one of the best ways to do that is through meditation. And speaking along the lines of what you were saying of people who are in this space of like, oh, well, I don't know. I was in an abusive relationship for 5 years, mentally, physically, all the abuse. Like, it was the lowest of low. And I'm not saying like other people, I'm in that experience, in that I had to muster up whatever strength speck was inside of me, and it was a speck, and decide to step into my power.
Yeah.
And it started through working out, eating better, and meditating. And I started doing those three things, and I said, all right, I'm going to commit to these 3 things because I knew I just had this inner knowing that's going to help me. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I wanted to leave that relationship, but I felt stuck because I didn't feel safe to leave it. It was like living hell. And so, but I knew the first place to start is going to be within. And I was like overweight, ate the crappiest things, like didn't know the first thing really about meditating. And I decided to commit to that. And so what I would say to anyone who's in a tough space is that there is a spark within you no matter what. First of all, it's there, and you just need to acknowledge it and listen to the slightest whisper of it. And the more you listen to the whisper of it, it will grow louder and louder and louder, and you will finally be able to truly hear the truth of who you are and easily navigate back into your power in the moments where you forget it, because we're human. We have an experience that's not always rainbows and butterflies, and you can learn how to navigate it more effectively. And make your desires stronger than your fears or stronger than your self-imposed limitations or excuses. Like when I was in that situation, I wanted nothing more than to leave that relationship. I knew that if I stayed, I would probably not want to live on this planet very long. Like that's how bad it was. And I could have easily, and I mean, it was a dark time for me, and I almost did not stay here. So I made my desires stronger than my fears, and stronger than anything. I was just like connected to what will my life look like when I'm out of this situation, when I'm in my power, when I'm looking good, when I'm, like smaller,
feeling
toned,
good,
whatever, like
yeah.
that. And I just was like, wow. And I made a promise to God, universe. I said, when I get out of this, I promise not only will I make the rest of my life the best of my life, but I will help other people in some way. I will support other people in some way. And honestly, that got me through it. And so I'm sharing this because anyone listening, there's a spark within you, and you can tune into it no matter how small or how dim it might look or feel right now. It's there, and you just need to bring your awareness to it and nurture it little by little. And if you feel like you can't do it on your own, get some support by someone who genuinely wants your happiness and wants to see you succeed, and do it for yourself. You don't need to do it all alone. I used to go to psychics at that time in my life. I was a teenager. I didn't really have access to,
Yeah.
So I literally would see this psychic, Mrs. Daniels, almost every week. She was my spiritual advisor, and she actually is the one who taught me how to meditate. She's like, I think you should start doing these meditations. So I'm just saying, there's people out there along your journey that are here to support you.
That's
a total mic drop moment.
And incredible. Yeah, I don't know that we can make anything better after that. I think that that was absolutely, it's super actionable. It is super actionable for people who are feeling a little bit, and you've heard it before, go meditate. Yeah. But this is why. This is a very specific reason as to why. And one of the things that I think was so beautiful was you said, if there's even the tiniest whisper of a voice, listen to that. Because that's the thing that people who feel stuck is they don't want to listen to the whisper. I didn't want to listen to the whisper. I was like, oh, that's not for me. That's not real. This is just how life is. This is how it's always going to be. And I didn't let myself listen to the whisper until I started hearing from more people, listen to the whisper and let it come and be louder. So I so appreciate you sharing that, and for being so vulnerable and sharing your story with us, because I think a lot of people, that resonates with people are in abusive relationships, whether it's family, whether it's partners, whether it's work, whether it's whatever the case may be. So it's a hard thing to get out of. You have literally answered every possible question I could have for you. I don't know, Chelsea, do you have any questions extra?
No, I'm so grateful. I feel like this has just been incredible, and you have brought so much wisdom and lived experience to your journey and your story for our listeners to really tap into and see themselves within that journey. And I'm super excited about it. I can't wait for our audience to listen and hear your message and receive all of this love and just joy that is just radiating off of you right now.
Yes. So thank you so much, Stephanie. Where can people find you and learn how to do amazing things in their life just like you?
Cool. Well, actually, I have a new site set up where everything's there and people could check out whatever they want. It's at stephb360.com. I actually have a free abundance hypnosis there as well. And so all the things are there, the podcast, Instagram, everything.
Perfect. We will
Awesome.
link that below to make sure. Yeah. And we're all going to be following you and seeing all these live events you got going on. It's really awesome.
Yeah, I'm so excited to share all of the upgrades and updates for sure.
It's awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been absolutely incredible. Anybody who's listening to this, please, if this does not apply to you, you know somebody in your life who this applies to. So please share this with them. Our goal, all three of us, our goal is to just help enlighten people, help them live better lives, help everybody just kind of elevate and just help everybody get healthier. So please share this information so that everyone can get healthier and happier and live the lives that they're intended to live. If anybody is in the local Columbus area and is interested in hanging with Chelsea and I on April 8th, we are doing an in-person seminar on helping people sort of merge that mind-body connection, get back into their body, start understanding a little bit about that physical connection that's happening with those mental and emotional symptoms, helping manage some of the anxiety, some of the chronic pain, all that kind of stuff. I believe we have one spot left. I think
we have two spots left now.
2 spots left. So please feel free to reach out and we will get you set up with that. Again, thank you, Stephanie, so much. This was absolutely incredible. We appreciate your time today, your wisdom. This has been amazing. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and I hope everyone has a fantastic week.
Yay.